Hey, see ya. Oh, no, it's not supposed to.
Attendees in person, our mics are very, very sensitive. If you need to have some chit chat, please go outside to avoid interference. Also, with our upgraded Zoom license, we do have some different procedures. So Emily, if you want to quickly go over public involvement, that'd be great.
So for public comment, because we have a new Zoom format, there will still be 2 opportunities to share public comment, but if you'd like to contribute, please email your name and/or the phone number that you're using to call in to mpo@landofsky.org. That way we can know and make sure we don't miss anybody who's wanting to comment virtually.
Can you repeat the email address one more time?
That email is mpo@landofsky.org. And John, are you putting that in? And that's in the chat. Cool.
Great. All right. Well, that said, let me call our August 26th MPO Governing Board, call the meeting to order. And we'll do the approval of the agenda and also the minutes later after some introductions. And Tristan, I think you had a few introductions or comments you wanted to make. We just have some new members.
Yes, we do have some new members today. First of all, our transit seats on the MPO board, they rotate every 2 years. So just to point out, David White, who served as the urban transit representative, his term expired. He has been replaced by Brandon Rogers. He's the Haywood County Commissioner. I believe he's quite involved in transit in Haywood County. Welcome, Brandon, if you're online today. Also, a familiar face has rejoined the MPO board, Bill Lashley from Henderson County. He will now be Henderson County's primary board member, along with Commissioner Rebecca McCall.
Great. Glad to have you back, Bill.
Glad to be here, Larry. Thanks for having me.
All right. Let me remind all our board members, and I'm sure we're all aware of it, that in accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it's a duty of every board member to avoid conflicts of interest, and just want to ask if any board member has a known conflict of interest with respect to any matter on the coming before the board today. And if so, please identify the conflict and refrain from any participation in that particular matter involved. Any conflicts for anyone to disclose today? Hearing none, then just feel free, if something comes up and you do feel that you might have a conflict, just let us know. And with that, if we have any members of the public who wish to make public comment, now would be one time in our agenda where that could be done.
I haven't received any emails yet. I don't believe we have any members of the public
Okay,
present.
well, great. And if anybody does want to make a comment, we will have another public comment session or a time at the end of toward the end of the agenda. So you have the minutes from our last meeting, which was in June of 2021, and you have the consent agenda in front of you, and if you which contains the 2021 minutes, and then the full agenda. And just want to ask for a motion to approve the June 2021 minutes, as well as our agenda today.
This is Gwen, so moved.
This is Dan.
Got a second on that? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those, well, we have to do a roll call, don't we? So hearing none, let's do a roll call.
All right, Nick, could you take us through a roll call today?
Yep, let me know if you have any issues hearing me. Starting at the top, Kim Rooney, City of Asheville. Gwen Whistler, City of Asheville.
Here, yeah,
Larry Harris, Town of Black Mountain.
Aye.
Billy Clark, Board of Transportation, Division 13. Chuck McGrady, Board of Transportation, Division 14.
Aye.
Parker Sloan, Buncombe County.
Aye.
Brownie Newman, Buncombe County. Ralph, Ralph Hamlet, Town of Canton. Dan Jesse, Village of Clyde. Ann Coletta, Village of Flat Rock.
Aye.
Bob Davy, Town of Fletcher.
Aye.
Kevin Inslee, Haywood County. Bill Lapsley, Henderson County.
Aye.
Rebecca McCall, Henderson County. Jennifer Hensley, City of Hendersonville.
Aye. Sorry, this is
George-
Rebecca McCall. Aye.
Thanks, Rebecca. George Bana, Town of Laurel Park. Matt Wechtel, Madison County. Mike Evelyn, Maggie Valley. John Chandler, Town of Mars Hill. Brian McCaskey, Village of Mills River.
Aye.
Tom Whitmer, Town of Montreat. Daniel Metcalf, Rural Transit. Brandon Rogers, Urban Transit. Anthony Sutton, Town of Waynesville.
Aye.
Jeff McKenna, Town of Weaverville.
Aye.
Jerry Vihan, Town of Woodfin. All right, ayes have it.
Great, thank you. Thanks, everyone. And our first matter of business is the regional transit plan. With the staff. leads-
Okay. So this is a follow-up from last month. We do have the completed document. That there is a link to the completed document provided in your agenda packet. We also included the executive summary from the study. But today I've asked Emily, who managed this study, to kind of just give a brief overview of the study and what's being recommended. And a quick note is that the staff recommendation is that we accept the report today. And I think per the discussion of last time, not necessarily pursue the recommendations immediately. But from there, Emily, please take it away.
All right. That's the wrong keyboard. So this, as Justin mentioned, is a follow-up to our last presentation given by the consultant. Since then, the Regional Transit Feasibility Study's final report has been submitted and is on the MPO's website. Today, as Justin mentioned, we are seeking a board recommendation to accept the study as an official planning document. As a refresher, regional transit has been an identified need in the MPO planning area since 2000. This isn't the first study that's been completed. In 2010, NCDOT funded and completed a study that recommended the consolidation of systems in Asheville, Buncombe, and Henderson counties. That recommendation was met with concern about loss of autonomy through consolidation. And it's important to note that this study, since then, there's been extensive growth in our region, and the need that led to that study still exists, a lack of regional transit connectivity. So in 2018, our board approved the Regional Transit Feasibility Study to be completed in fiscal year 21, and it is now finished. So the French Quarter Road planning area covers a wide geographical region that features extensive urban sprawl. As housing costs continue to rise and our population grows, more people are moving away from urban centers. Demographic shifts are causing changes in commute patterns, and while transit has been traditionally viewed as something that strictly serves lower income populations, in the midst of employers struggling to retain employees, combined with the persistent patterns of movement of residents outside of higher cost urban centers, it can be assumed that people are moving to areas where employment is less accessible by transit. And worker shortages further contribute to the growing need that we have for regional transit. In this graph, you can see that since 2002, the percentage of workers who both live and work in the same county has been declining. A recent study published in The Smartest Dollar ranked Asheville as the 7th mid-sized city in renter wage gap. So while someone living in Asheville would need to earn $21.58 to afford a one-bedroom, the average hourly wage for Asheville renters is only $11.34, which leaves a pretty significant wage gap. And as the number of workers living and working in the same county declines, commute patterns from surrounding counties into Buncombe County have been increasing. There are 7,000 more daily commuters coming from Henderson County to Buncombe County in 2018 than in 2002. 2,500 more commuters from Haywood to Buncombe, and 1,000 more commuters from Madison County to Buncombe County. So the combination of commuters that move across the region into Buncombe County, combined with a number of workers living and working in the same county, shows that people are crossing county lines to access jobs. The map on this slide shows existing transit services in our region, and each color represents a different fixed route system. As you can see, there's pretty little overlap as it is right now. The growth projections in our region further contribute to our need for regional transit. Our region is projected to grow by 185,000 people within the next 25 years, and it can be assumed that demographic shifts and commuting patterns will persist. Which takes us to the solution. The population growth, demographic shifts, and commuter trends lead to a clear need for access to transit across county lines. And this is going to be familiar, but I do want to provide an overview of what the Regional Transit Feasibility Study recommended. And those recommendations came in 4 different groups. The recommendation about service, routes, governance, and funding. The consultant recommended that a new regional transit service include fixed route, demand response, van pool, and microtransit services in order to meet the needs of a region that is composed of rural, small, and mid-sized communities. There were 4 proposed regional express routes: the north, east, south, and west route, which would cross county lines to connect people from around the region to employment centers. The consultant recommended that the north and south routes be implemented first, followed by east and west routes, with all routes running smaller transit vehicles and operating at 3 different times: morning, afternoon, and evening. These specific recommendations were selected following public input and steering committee meetings. In order to supplement the proposed regional service, the final recommendation also included that other services could be provided by a regional agency, including van pool and microtransit. A regional agency could promote and implement a van pool service that targets employees lacking access to employment near the residential areas, or employees that have long commutes. A van pool service could increase alternative transportation options, have routes designed according to demand and employer-employee interests, and could transport between 5 and 14 passengers in vans. A regional agency could also provide microtransit services through contracts with providers to either accommodate first last mile connections or serve different regional nodes. And lastly, the regional agency could assist in other areas to take burden off of local agencies, such as creating a regional fare path, employee training, grant administration, and vehicle maintenance. The next portion of our consultant's recommendation were about governance. These were formed after peer study analysis, conversations with the steering committee, and meetings with the work group, which was comprised of elected officials. The governance recommendations describe how the consultant deemed regional transit could most effectively and efficiently be structured. Intergovernmental agreements, or IGAs, can designate a single operator for regional service and allow municipalities to negotiate terms. IGAs create an opportunity for consolidation. However, this structure relies heavily on one agency and limits the control that other agencies have. IGAs also have more limited funding opportunities. Another route that could be taken in order to establish a regional transit service is using new enabling legislation. CART and Go Triangle are 2 agencies structured this way. New legislation allows for an authority to have flexibility in designating its powers, but it's a very time-consuming process and it's politically involved. The consultant's recommended path to creating a regional transit service was to use existing legislation, or Article 25. This route avoids potential political problems, allows existing agencies to maintain independence while keeping a new regional service accountable to the region as a whole. Article 25 was used to set up WRPTA in Burt County, Inter-County Public Transportation Agency near Elizabeth City, and Care Area Transportation Authority in coastal North Carolina. Implementing the process of a regional transit authority under Article 25 includes securing startup funding, building support, determining funding sources, negotiating agreements, forming a board of trustees, and then beginning the regional service. And to summarize the pros and cons of alternative governance recommendations, Article 25 would mean more funding opportunities than intergovernmental agreements, as well as more local autonomy. And using this existing legislation is also a faster process than establishing new legislation and avoids political conflicts. The last portion of the report's recommendations was about funding. Creating a new service and agency will require a funding source, so the consultant presented 3 different packages that built on each other. Funding Package 1 proposed utilizing only existing sources of funding. However, it's important to note that these existing sources of funding for transit are pretty maximized as it is. So using these would likely mean taking away some funding from other services that exist already. Funding Package 2 encourages utilizing existing sources of funding and creating a vehicle registration and vehicle rental fee. And then Funding Package 3 included using the existing sources of funding, creating a vehicle registration and rental fee, and creating a new sales tax. On this slide, you can see the potential revenue involved in Funding Package 3, only from the new sources. Funding Package 3 would produce a total of $19.4 million in new revenue if the region opted only for a 1/4-cent sales tax, a $5 registration fee, and a 1/4-cent vehicle rental fee. While the funding package that is recommended would produce $19.4 million in revenue roughly, getting a regional transit authority up and running would cost less than $4 million in total. And if we only focus on phase 1, which is the implementation of the north and the south routes, then it would cost less than $3 million. So essentially pursuing funding package number 3 would create a significant amount of revenue for the region that could be used in other ways outside of just regional transit. And that brings us to the real question, is it worth it? This question arises often when new services are proposed. And when it comes to the question of worth, there are a lot of considerations that need to be made. Ultimately, I think that we all, in our own way and realm, are doing the best we can with what we have for the people that we serve. And right now we have a great opportunity to create inclusive and accessible regional transit. It's important to remember that these recommendations in the final report were also formed after public input that determined regional transit is something that is both needed and wanted.
Great, thank you. Oh, still got some to go.
I'm sorry, I had some technical difficulties. I'm almost done, I promise, Larry. One of the survey questions asked participants to consider what they would prioritize in the realm of transit. The top 3 answers involved regional transit, expanding service to more areas, improving access to destinations, and creating direct cross-county connections. When asked about investment, the public responded that increasing local frequency was their #1 priority, but second, third, and fourth priorities touched on regional transit. Again, extending geographic reach of transit, improving connections between towns, and offering service to key destinations. It's important to note that a regional agency could free up local funding that is currently being used for things like Route 170 to Black Mountain, and that would allow investment to flow back into local frequency routes while still addressing regional needs. There were also a lot of comments received during this process, and this slide shows some of the comments that express interest and support for regional transit that people in our area have. The benefits of regional transit are vast, in my opinion. Regional transit, in addition to meeting the needs that our area has, also produces economies of scale, which refers to cost savings from increased production. So in this case, a regional transit authority could eliminate redundancies, free up local funding going to other services. Furthermore, creating a regional authority also serves the potential to streamline services, alleviate congestion, expand funding opportunities, and increase mobility for underserved populations. Public transit has economic benefits as well. According to the American Public Transportation Association, for every dollar invested in public transit, $4 in economic returns are generated. A regional authority could also offer a lifeline to struggling transit systems in the area, improve accessibility and connections between jobs and people, And the commute experience could allow riders to do other things on their way to work, like read or even do work. There are numerous cost savings produced by taking transit as well, from lower costs of vehicle ownership and maintenance to lower costs associated with crashes. As research shows, riding transit is safer than taking single occupancy vehicles, and lower emission costs for the region, with fewer vehicles on the road over time improving air quality. One of the coolest things about transit, in my opinion, is how it inherently touches so many different areas of life by literally connecting people to services, recreation, and jobs. Audre Lorde said that there is no such thing as a single-issue struggle because we do not lead single-issue lives. The factors that have led to our need for regional transit are as interconnected as transit is with other areas of life and public service. Rising housing costs contribute to movement away from urban centers, which change travel and commute patterns and impact transportation costs. At the end of the day, while you may not personally rely on public transit, it's likely that in some way or another you rely on people who do. So it's important to remember that an investment in transit is an investment in the people who we need and who need the service. The way that we move forward is critical, as ridership is a byproduct of whether the system has access and options. So the first step towards addressing this problem of lack of regional transit connectivity is to accept the study as an official planning document. And from there, we can follow the path the implementation path that was proposed by our consultant. And that concludes my presentation, Larry, and I can open it for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Emily or anyone, any other staff member? Or comments?
This is Parker. I'm curious, did we receive this PowerPoint in an email ahead of time?
It's on the
No.
link.
Okay.
It's on the.
Not the PowerPoint.
The full study was provided.
Yeah, the full
Right.
study is provided and linked. The PowerPoint is not, but I'm more than happy to send that out.
That'd be great. Yeah, I just would love to read back through your kind of financing options and ideas there. That was interesting to hear.
Right.
Thank you.
We'll be posting PowerPoint materials on the website after the meeting.
Great. Thank you. Good point. Any other comments or questions? And if not, the staff recommendation is to accept the regional transit feasibility study as an official planning document of the French Broad River MPO, and I'd entertain a motion to that effect.
This is Parker Sloan with Buncombe County. I'll move to accept the plan.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Parker. Is there a second?
Anthony Sutton, I'll second.
Great, thank you. And let's call the roll, Nick.
All right, just gonna read through the folks that are here. If I'm missing one, let me know at the end. Gwen Whistler, City of Asheville.
Aye.
Larry Harris, Town of Black Mountain.
Aye.
Chuck McGrady, Board of Transportation, Division 14.
Aye.
Parker Sloan, Buncombe County.
Aye.
Brownie Newman, Buncombe County.
Just got a text from Brownie. Brownie's having trouble unmuting, but he says he votes to support accepting the plan.
Great.
Sounds good. Ann Coletta, Village of Flat Rock.
Aye.
Bob Davey, Town of Fletcher.
Aye.
Bill Lapsley, Henderson County.
Aye.
Rebecca McCall, Henderson County.
Aye.
Jennifer Hensley, City of Hendersonville.
Aye.
Brian Caskey, Town of Mills River.
Aye.
Anthony Sutton, Town of Waynesville.
Aye.
Jeff McKenna, Town of Weaverville.
Aye.
All right, that's all I got.
Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone. The next item on our agenda would be the amendments to the 2020 through 2029 TIP.
And with that, I'll hand things off to John Wright out on our staff.
Right,
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll break up the TIP amendments into a couple of different sections to hopefully make it easier to flow through. First up on our amendments would be B5541. This is adding a project so that it can go ahead and undergo preliminary engineering. This would be a bridge in Haywood, Sickety Road, it's Bridge 540 over Sickety Road, State Route 1513. That is adding it into the TIP. After that, we have 3 projects that we are looking to commit to delay certain elements of to allow for additional time for planning and development. This includes US 64 Lodge Street to State Route 1153 over White Pine Road there. So we're delaying this project to allow additional time. And in addition to that, you have in Buncombe County, US 19 and 63, we are allowing for additional time for design, and therefore delaying construction into the future there for the drainage improvements. After that, we have a series of both divisional, regional, and statewide various safety improvements that we're adding to fiscal years 21, 22, and 23 that weren't previously programmed. And those would round out the amendments to the highway project. Amendments and modifications for the bicycle pedestrian lap. One, we are allowing for additional time for right-of-way construction for the Town Branch Greenway in the city of Asheville. And in addition, we are amending the Black Mountain Greenway, allowing for 2 different sections. One just redefines the beginning and end scope so that it starts from into the Oaks and goes to Black Mountain Ave, and then from Black Mountain Ave to Sutton Avenue. And finally, this is going to be a modification and not an amendment, but that would be to the Coosa Rail Trail there. We're just combining a project that was previously divided into 3 sections into one at the request of Henderson County. The last item on the list is a transit-related project. It's just adding program funding that was initially designated through fiscal year 17 through 21 and adding those funds into fiscal year 22. Those would be directed to Henderson County.
Great. Thank you, John. Has that got it? So you have those amendments to the TIP, to the 2020 through 2029 TIP in front of us. And I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Larry, we might have lost the audio for the room.
Can't hear me?
We can hear you, Larry. I think it's an audio. We're having trouble hearing.
Okay, are we ready to entertain a motion to approve the TIP amendments?
This is Anthony Sudmel, so moved.
Thanks, Anthony. Is there a second?
Ann Coletta, I'll second.
Thank you, Ann. Any discussion, any questions? Hearing none, can we do the roll call, Nick?
Yep, last one. Gwen Whistler, City of Asheville.
Aye.
Larry Harris, Town of Black Mountain.
Aye.
Chuck McGrady, Board of Transportation Division 14.
Aye.
Parker Sloan, Buncombe County.
Aye.
Brownie Newman, Buncombe County.
Received another text on this one. Brownie votes yes.
Ann Coletta, Village of Flat Rock.
Aye.
Bob Davey, Town of Fletcher.
Aye.
Bill Lapsley, Henderson County.
Aye.
Rebecca McCall, Henderson County.
Aye.
Jennifer Hensley, City of Hendersonville.
Aye.
Brian Caskey, Town of Mills River.
Aye.
Anthony Sutton, Town of Waynesville.
Aye.
Jeff McKenna, Town of Weaverville.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Great, thank you, Nick. I appreciate that. Next item is our prioritization update.
All right. I've I'll be giving you guys, won't call it a heavy update on the situation, but you all should have received an email from me last month about what is going on with prioritization. And so today we're hoping to get a little bit more into the detail, have a bit of a discussion about essentially what's going on, what it means for our region, and some specifics about our region. So just as a refresher, what is prioritization? It's essentially the step in the process where we try to figure out what projects in our plans go from plan to funded. So it is a very important part of the process. This is a part of the process where honestly we get more public involvement and public engagement than most of our other steps. As also background, this is something that is governed by the Strategic Transportation Investments Act of North Carolina. So it is a statewide process, and it has been around since 2012. Also, just a side note, in terms of the process, it's relatively unique for North Carolina, but since its inception, other states have started to establish very, very similar processes. So in terms of what's going on with Prioritization 6.0, NCDOT conducted over 600 express designs for projects in the STIP to get updated cost estimates. They did this, partially just to get updated cost estimates, but also as part of an effort to see how much funding would be available to program new projects in this round of prioritization. I believe that the end of June they were due. Is that correct, DOT folks? And all in all, there was a net increase of about $7.5 billion in project costs across the state. I repeat, $7.5 billion in net increases. And for our region specifically, that's worked out to about $880 million in cost increases. John on our staff pulled some of the data to look at it relatively, and what you see is that our region, the cost increases were on average greater than what was seen across the state. So you also see that when you get into the different pots or tiers of funding available in the prioritization process. On the left, you see statewide mobility. That's the tier that funds interstate projects, freeway projects, projects at some of the major airports are across the state, including Asheville Regional. And so what they found is that looking out to 2033, the statewide mobility tier is over $2 billion over what are expected to be the revenues. For regional impact, every single regional impact or regional impact tier across the state is over budget. And to note, our region, Region G, this I would argue is probably the worst faring tier in the state. We anticipate a little over $600 million to be available through 2033, and with just committed projects that are already programmed, we're close to $1 billion over. For division needs, there are some divisions where there are expected to be some funds available for programming. As some people at DOT have put it, some of those are pretty close to no funding available. There's not a ton, and again, Division 13 especially, as well as Division 14 are over budget. So long story short, when we were looking at the potential to program new projects through this round of prioritization, there simply isn't anticipated funding to program. So as a spot work group at the state level, generally there's 4 different steps that the MPO involved in terms of prioritization. We submitted projects 2 years ago, but looking at the situation now, what's been recommended and approved by the Board of Transportation is that we not go through the step to apply local input points, and that for this round of prioritization, no new projects will be programmed. So that is basically where we are at now. Long story short, very few to no expected revenues to be available for programming. So all the projects that we submitted 2 years ago, they are not going to get on the STIP anytime soon, at least through this process. Something to just clarify about is that while this is fairly dire, this is a long-range budget situation that we're talking about. This is not the same thing that occurred last summer. This is not a short-term DOT cash balance issue. This is looking at funding over the next 10 years. And moving forward, even though we've decided to halt this round of prioritization, DOT is still required to develop a new STIP, or State Transportation Improvement Program. They are required to do so every 4 years. So even though we won't be programming new projects through P6.0, we still have to develop that schedule of project delivery, looking at existing committed projects. So the prioritization work group is continuing to meet. In terms of regional representation, I am on this work group, as well as Vicki Eastland from Land of Sky RPO, and also Brian Birch, the former Division 14 engineer. And so we do have pretty robust representation, but all in all, we're going to continue to meet and talk about processes and considerations of how we develop this new STIP. As we talked about earlier this spring and late last fall, one thing that we don't really want to go through again is a reprogramming of the STIP and moving project schedules in a way that's not collaborative. So we do have a little bit of time to hopefully work out those processes and go through some sort of way to program our projects, get them scheduled in a way that we hope will reflect our region's priorities. So all in all, that is where we are at with this round of prioritization. I hope to have more details available to you all next month, but we thought that this would be a good time to discuss this at the board. And
Thank you, Tristan. Comments? Sir, go ahead, Tristan.
Oh, I was just going to say, I know Chuck McGrady, he's on the line, and they've been talking about this extensively at the Board of Transportation. So not to put you on the spot, Chuck, but if there's anything I missed or anything you'd like to add, let us know.
Nothing you missed. I thought you did a very clear statement of where we're at. The board, has a responsibility to bring its proposed construction in line with the funding that's available. And as projects get closer to occurring, there's a process for looking at the upcoming projects, and as a broad number of projects across the state were being looked at and evaluated in terms of their cost, we recognized we had a very big problem. It's not a problem that's going to bring everything to a halt near term, but it doesn't suggest that there's any basis that you want to go start putting more projects on and making further commitments at a point in time where the revenue model is broken. So I will add that board member Clark and myself and the two division engineers are going to be getting together here in near term with the idea of trying to explore some options. I mean, we have no ability to impose anything and wouldn't dare do it even if we, had that authority. But the thought was that maybe the four of us can figure out a way to value engineer some things, move it around to deal with the issue. What the broad numbers that Tristan gave you don't really evidence is exactly what's driving this. And the number that scares me the most is the one actually that Tristan sort of hit on, and that is at the regional level. Division 13 and 14 have got a really bad number. And it's really being driven by two projects as much as anything, Sweeten Creek and the I-26 across the river. The numbers that were plugged in for those projects sometime earlier, and the numbers that are now our best estimate as to what they will actually cost are hundreds of millions of dollars higher than what they're plugged in at. And so I don't know what will come of conversations that we're planning, I think, to have next week with Billy and Wanda and myself, and we'll try to maybe come up with an idea as to how to incrementally begin to fix the problem, at least at the regional level. And then certainly we'll be coming back to the MPO to let you know what our thoughts might be. But again, it's a two-step here, so neither the board nor just two members of the board are in a position to solve the problem. It's just I'd like to brainstorm what our options are. Thank you, Tristan.
Thank you, Chuck. And I think a couple stats to follow up on some of Chuck's points. In terms of the small number of projects and their impact, overall across the state, some quick numbers, 6% of the projects account for over 60% of the cost increases that we're seeing. And in terms of Region G, the way things are right now, to leave that as things are, the funding would not become available until, I believe, 2052. So it is, as you can see, well above the 10-year budget. And so I think generally we'll be engaging with the divisions about how we can hopefully trim some of these costs. As Hannah and I were discussing today, some of what might be planned as a Cadillac might have to be drawn back a bit into a Honda Fit. No offense to Honda Fit, I'm a Fit owner, great little car. But we're going to have to look at potential changes of some of these projects because I think in terms of what we've heard from our communities over the years is that just about all of these projects are high priorities. They've been counting on having them delivered for years. And so we need to have some hard discussions about what's the biggest thing we can get for our buck. How can we make sure that we're meeting the community's goals for these projects and trying to get that closer to within budget.
Has anyone done a study to compare these cost overruns to how long these projects have been on the table and how long they've been kicked down the road and dates changed?
We've done a little bit of work on that. I don't have those numbers at my fingertips, but yeah, I'll say generally projects that were programmed in the further away in P 3.0 generally had higher cost increases than the last round of prioritization. I will say that I think that is definitely a consideration in terms of, you know, talking about funding not being available until 2052. Are some of these projects still going to be viable if that's the timeline we're looking at? A lot of our corridors are having apartments go up on them, they're having development. It's not the same corridor that was being looked at when these projects were programmed.
And also, how will this new exit on the interstate affect all of this?
That's a good question. So just FYI, with the interchange, we have moved that vote back. In part, the request from DOT, the timeline has been dropped, at least for now, because we want to get more sure footing on where the funding is going to come from. I think that, you know, as of right now, there would be 10 million that would impact the Division 13 pot. But what's in the state budget that's been passed by both the Senate and the House would provide $30 million that would not impact transportation budgets. So just generally speaking, for the interchange, we are planning on waiting until that's a bit more finalized so we can have a vote that's not based on assumptions about where the funding is coming from and its impacts.
It just seems with the new system of everything being pushed so far out that if you prioritize anything and put it to the top of the list, the impact is greater and greater and greater.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of hard discussions about what this means for planning and programming moving forward. Do we still go through a process where we are looking at projects that are very far out, or do we try to tighten that up? If we do try to tighten that up, I will say a lot more planning needs to be done before we get to the funding stage. And so there's a lot of considerations to deal with what we're looking at.
Right. Thanks, Tristan. Any other comments or questions on our status of our prioritization for this round?
Larry, Bill Lapsley, if I can make two comments.
Sure.
First of all, while we have Chuck McGrady on the line, Chuck, I mentioned this the other day. I think this is a good forum to bring it up. As a lot of the members on the MPO recall, I had the honor of serving on a task force appointed by the Secretary of Transportation about 2 years ago called NC Fast. Purpose of that task force was to look at the revenue projections for DOT for just these projects. So here's what we've just heard is a good example of why the Secretary was looking at the fact that we need to explore and I think implement some additional sources of revenues. And so Chuck, if you can you give us an update? Has the legislature received that report? And is there any indication that there's going to be movement on increasing the revenue stream to these projects?
Thanks for the question. The legislature did receive the report back early in the year. The administration made a decision that with all sorts of other things going on, they were going to let the report sit for a year and make it the focus of its legislative work in the short session coming up. Now, with that said, I'm aware of an effort, I believe, put forward by the statewide Chamber of Commerce and a bunch of paving contractors and others to begin to implement portions of that report immediately. And to do that, what they would need to do is you've got a House budget, got a Senate budget, you've got conferees. The Senate and House conferees are going to get together. You could, in theory, begin to implement the portions of the report that would, bring in additional revenues, mostly fees, motor vehicle registration fees, fees related to hybrids and non-gas using vehicles, are what I understand is being suggested. I just don't have a read, Bill, as to whether that's going to get any traction. And moreover, we haven't had a real budget for a while, although the transportation budget passed last year and became law. The question really is whether legislative leaders are going to bring the governor to the table and try to work out a comprehensive budget, in which case, it might be easier to include some of that in the budget if we're going to actually have one. If, on the other hand, we're into the same process we had for the last 2 years or so, I would tell you, it's hardly worth the effort to work real hard to put something in a package that's going to get vetoed and isn't clearly going to become law. So ask me that question, Bill, in about a month.
Okay, I promise that's what we'll do. Thanks for that update. Larry, just one other point. Tristan, maybe you can answer this question. As you mentioned in your presentation here, these spot projects that the counties and municipalities submitted were done 2 years ago. We all, I think, understand that circumstances on road construction almost change month to month. And so what I'm concerned about is here we sit with really projects from the various counties and municipalities that are in the current STIP were ones that the groups presented 4 years ago or more. And they finally got included in the STIP, and now everything's kind of put on hold. And I can conceive that there are projects that we would like to submit today that may, in the eyes of the local governments, have a higher priority now than the ones that are in the STIP. And if we're being told that, well, we're not going to be able to get a project that clearly is a priority today based on today's situation, if we can't get it in the STIP for another year, or I'm afraid it might be 2 or 3 years if things keep going as you presented, we're going to really be in a jam. So I guess I would like to investigate, would the local governments have an opportunity through this next round of STIP to conceivably pull a project from the existing STIP and insert another one that, based on the information we have today, would have a higher priority? Is that possible, or are we just stuck with what we've got?
My understanding of the STI law, Strategic Transportation Investments, is that to get a new project on the STIP, we would have to submit it through this process. We couldn't do a swap out of projects. That's my understanding. DOT folks, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do think Bill really hit on a great point that we're talking about around the state, is that on one hand, we have a very long list of projects that are considered committed. That is not to get overly plannery, because I know planners sometimes focus on words too much, But the word committed is very important here. And DOT's current take is once committed, always committed. But as Bill brings up, when we're looking at our committed projects stretching us out to 2050 in one case, we're losing our ability to be flexible, to be responsive, and to be innovative. And so those are two very different sides of the coin that I think we're going to have to work out over the coming months.
Great. Thank you. Any other comments? And Bill, thank you. Chuck, thank you. And of course, Tristan, thank you for bringing it all to us. Any other comments, questions? Thank you. And we don't require any action on that matter, but it will be reflected in the minutes that we're won't want to have anything in this current round. We're ready for our regular updates. Is Mark on the line for Division 13?
Yeah, Larry, I'm here. What I'll do is start out by just giving a quick update on where we stand from a tropical storm response, and then I'm going to turn it over to Hannah, and she'll give the rest of Division 13's update. So, as most of you know, about a week ago, a little over a week ago, we were hit with Tropical Storm Fred. The western part of the division, Division 13, got hit fairly hard. The eastern part of the division, not quite as bad. So at current standing, we still have two roads closed, one in Yancey, NC 197, and then a secondary road in Buncombe County where two bridges got washed out. So we're working to get those roads open back up, and hopefully by the weekend there'll be no roads left closed in the division. So still a lot of cleanup to do, a lot of folks who are suffering, obviously, and have suffered tremendously, especially our neighbors to the west and Division 14. So, but overall we fared fairly well compared to them, especially in the eastern side of the division. Buncombe and Yancey counties were probably our two hardest hit counties.
Right, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Do you want to try to pull that up, Tristan, or whoever got access? We have the construction and project development updates available on the MPO website. I think Emily's trying to pull them up on the screen for everybody, but you can access them later through the agenda or just by going to the website. I guess I'll go ahead with construction. Construction in Division 13, Buncombe and Madison County is largely resurfacing and bridge replacement contracts currently. I will kind of give you a verbal update of what's going on I-26. So the Brevard Road I-26 interchange project, we've had another traffic shift on a new alignment out there since our last meeting, so you'll have recognized that if you drive through that area regularly. But the contractor is preparing to complete the last of the I-26 concrete paving. The remaining work, it just includes the final paving and pavement markings, and then a few miscellaneous items. They are expecting to have that project completed by the end of this calendar year. And then the I-4700 project, which is the widening of I-26 between Airport Road and I-40. It's largely the contractors continuing grading operations and installing some storm drainage to widen out the eastbound lanes. There's a lot of structures work ongoing, including the French Broad River Bridge, the Blue Ridge Parkway foundations, and then various retaining walls that you'll see, again, if you drive I-26. We are expecting to do a traffic shift on that section of I-26, which will accommodate both the eastbound and the westbound traffic on the current eastbound alignment. We're looking to do that sometime this fall. You can also see, if you drive through the area, the contractors recently completed some concrete paving near Glenbridge Road as well. So a lot of work going on I-26. Again, you can look at the copy of the construction updates for other construction active in the Division 13. I'll move to project development. I don't think there's really much to report on project development since our last meeting. I did provide a list of all of the STEP projects, what their right-of-way acquisition and let dates are. general rule of thumb, if we've got a let date between fiscal year 21 through 25, we've reinstated preliminary engineering. So we're actively working on design for those projects. Anything that's been delayed, really 26 through 29 is likely still on hold. Also, if you see a let date that says January of 2040, that's not our planned let date. That just means it's post years or beyond fiscal year 29. We really only show dates for the 10-year period of our current STIP. So it's safe to assume typically that construction will begin 2 or 3 years after right-of-way acquisition begins. So yeah, that's really just a general update, project development. I don't think there's anything new to report since last meeting.
Great, thank you, Hannah. Any questions for Hannah? Or for Mark? Hearing none, is Wanda there for Division 14?
Larry, Wanda isn't. This is Steve Williams, so I'm gonna be
Steve.
handling our updates.
Great.
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Nick, do you have those Division 14? Great, thank you. First of all, I-26 in Henderson County. I think since we last met, Fanning Bridge Road, the bridge there has been open and the old bridge torn down. Butler Bridge is still supposed to be open in September the 10th and on schedule for that. You're going to see some more traffic shifts kind of in the area of the rest areas in the first week or second week of September. A lot of drainage work has been ongoing, which most of us don't really see that. It's happening kind of under the road and such. Eastbound rest area should be open before Thanksgiving, and the westbound rest area is still scheduled to be open in May of next year. And pretty much everything else that you see has been ongoing for a while. The projects in Henderson County that have been lingering, we're just waiting on vegetation establishment there, and you'll see those coming off the list probably before our next meeting. Also note that the I-26 bridge over the Green River, if you remember that let and it had a delayed availability date, that one is under construction now. And moving on to the project development side. In Haywood County, one project that's not on here that I neglected to put it on there, I apologize for that. That's the two bridges on 2374 near Waynesville, the one at 19 where you're going to Maggie Valley, and also the one over Richland Creek. There is a public workshop for both of those bridges. That's next Thursday. The invites have been sent out, and it's at the Lake Junaluska Conference Center, the Herald Center. The local officials workshop is from 3 to 4 on that day. And then the general open house workshop is from 4 to 7. Also in Haywood County, U5888, which is North Main Street in Walnut, that's showing a let date of the fall of 2022. We requested that be moved up so that could be completed in time to handle the detour traffic from those bridge projects. And now the let date on that is December of this year, December of 2021. Otherwise, everything on there is as you see. A reminder that these spreadsheets are on the French Broad River website, and they're contained where the agenda and the minutes page is over on the right-hand side. So unless anybody has any other questions on any of these in Haywood or Henderson County, that should wrap that up. On the storm side of things, all roads in Haywood County are now open. And I'm kind of surprised at 276, the damage that they had there going out of Waynesville, that did happen. So way to go, the DOT forces. Davison River Road, there's a railroad trestle that's damaged, so that's closed. And the old Wagon Road and Diamond Creek Road in Transylvania County, of course, this is out of the French Broad River, but just giving you an update on that storm damage. There are numerous bridges that are damaged, and also some road sections on some secondary roads that are completely gone. So we're still looking at a month or more before all those roads will be open. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. Go, Larry.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, this is Anthony Sutton of Waynesville. We want to really thank NCDOT for all the hard work they've done in our county. They've gone above and beyond, especially on 276. Having seen it, I would not have thought that it could have been fixed as quickly as it was. There was whole sections missing, and we really want to thank you for all your hard work. It means a lot to us.
Thanks, Anthony. I'll certainly pass it along.
Great, thank you, Anthony. Anyone else? Anything for Steve? If not, Daniel, Transportation Planning Branch.
This is Nick here. I got a message from Daniel saying he has nothing to present, but the newsletter's in the packet.
Okay, so newsletters in the packet, no presentation at today's meeting. That sounds great. Federal Highway update, Michael?
Yes, sir. How's everybody today? I just wanted an overview of the infrastructure bill. It's back in the House, but it doesn't look like they're going to be voting on it anytime soon. Unfortunate, but that's the way sausage is made. Anyway, just to give you a brief overview, it does include $550 billion in new federal infrastructure investments. It includes the 5-year reauthorization from fiscal year 22 through 26 of the surface transportation programs. There's an increase of 29% or $13.7 billion per fiscal year in highway contract authorization, and that is predominantly 90% of that is distributed by formula. There's an increase of $47.3 billion over the course of the legislation, which breaks down to $9.5 billion per fiscal year. That'll be transferred from the general fund for highways. There are 22 new highway programs, including new formula programs for resilience, carbon reduction, bridges, and EV charging stations. And there's also discretionary programs for bridges, EVs, rural projects, resilience, and reconnecting communities, including broadband. There's a focus on bridge projects, carbon reduction, resilience, and project delivery. And there will be a $90 billion general fund transfer into the highway account. So that's the 30,000-foot overview on the Infrastructure and Investment in Jobs Act that we hope to get passed pretty soon. Any questions?
Any questions for Michael? Hearing none. Tristan, work group reports, staff updates, housekeeping.
Sure, really quickly, our prioritization subcommittee did not meet in August. I think that's the first time in about a year and a half we gave them a month off. But they will be meeting September 7th, and they'll have to pay for that month off. We'll have quite a bit to share. Just kidding. Transit Operators Work Group and 5307 Subrecipient Work Group. The next meeting is to be determined for those groups, but they'll be scheduled out for the next year soon. Citizens Advisory Committee, they met July 14th. Their next meeting is October 13th. And the Hellbender Trail Stakeholder Group, they last met July 29th. Really quickly with the corridor studies, we are working through the city's committees and commissions to eventually bring those to City Council for approval. That is for Hendersonville Road and Tunnel Road. Those are 2 corridor studies managed by the MPO in cooperation with the city, Buncombe County, and NCDOT.
Great, thank you, Tristan. Any questions for Tristan on that? And if not, Tristan, any other info that you want to pass along?
I think the two big things legislatively, obviously the infrastructure bill that Mike talked about, a little bit of specifics on, at least as the infrastructure bill looks right now. North Carolina would be expected to receive about $7.2 billion in their highway program funding, $457 million towards bridge replacement and repairs, $911 million for public transportation, and $109 million for EV infrastructure. So it is a very big bill. As Mike talked about, that funding spread out mostly over 5 years. Just at least as things stand, we would anticipate that the amount of surface transportation block grant funding that comes directly to the MPO would likely continue to increase with what's in the bill.
Great.
And also, again, with the state budget, we're keeping an eye on that and how that may impact the funding for the proposed interchange on I-26.
Right, right. Any questions for Tristan on proposed legislation or anything else he's mentioned? And the next meeting we have proposed, we might be talking about the exchange, but likely not unless we have more firm language on more firm information on funding. Would that not be the right way for the board to be thinking on this, Tristan?
Yeah, I think until there's more firm information on funding, or if we receive word from DOT or Federal Highways that we really need to get this into our MTP, we will wait on one of those two things until we put it back on the agenda.
Very good. That sounds good. Any other comments from anyone on any of the topics we've covered thus far? And if not, then I'd open up the floor for public comment if we have any.
I still haven't received any notification of someone wanting to make public comment.
Okay. Sounds good. So hearing none, no other comments, no other business before the board. I think we can consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.